activist in the Harlem community, and she's done a lot of work in the community. It dates all the way back to the 40s and the 50s and the 60s until currently, to recently. She was a consumer advocate. She was very easy to document because she was in a lot of books, which made it very easy for me. And I kept finding more and more books where her name appeared. And one of the key things that was interesting about documenting Mrs. Rice was that she testified against racism during Adam Clayton Powell's trials to Congress. And because of that one document, she appeared in like 5 or 6 different books. So, and one of the problems I did have is trying to document young people, because a lot of young people in the African American community don't get documented by mainstream media, or it's difficult to get a long oral history. Some people are lucky that they have a good oral history. So one of the persons that after I did a lot of people that were like 80 and over, I wanted to do someone 50 and under. So I found a woman by the name of Ina Norris, who is active in the community, and I was fascinated by her work. She went to college to be a psychologist, but she ended up working with youth. She uses theater to help young people to channel their industry, their energy, and their aggression. So I really liked her work. And one of the things I like about Wikipedia is putting the pieces together. Because when I start up, I don't know very much about the person. But as I slowly start to put the pieces together by what I can find as far as references, then it's like I get to know the person. And the best thing about it all is the feeling you get in respecting other people's work. And I've also done Wikipedia pages for activists in the food justice movement. I found a woman in Brooklyn who does a lot of work with social justice issues. I've even documented someone that was working with the Permaculture Network in Ghana. So I have learned a lot from documenting people. I've gotten into a lot of history. It's taken me all the way back to World War II. And one of the fascinating things about documenting Mrs. Rice, I ran into a historian who wrote a book when I think it was called When Citizens Claimed the City, When Tenants Claimed the City. And I asked her, well, how did you find Mrs. Rice? I was able to talk, and she was able to send me some of her documents that she had found. And what was interesting, Mrs. Rice, at 97 years old, had an incredible memory. And how she worked with the Harlem tenant strike. And I got a lot of this information from a historian. So I've documented a lot of different people. Florence Rice, Thelma Davidson Adair, who's done a lot of work in the Harlem community. How I started, I went to an orientation meeting. And I just stumbled upon it. I really didn't know. I thought it was crowdfunding. But it was something completely different. So I like the whole idea of open source scholarship. And I think it's going to be a great tool for young people because they'll get a chance to actually do research and put things together, put references together, the same thing you do in college. AfroCROWD. So I've learned a lot. I go to as many of the sessions as I can. And I keep learning as I go along. I've done about 15. And only 2 of them were rejected. And one of them that was rejected, I didn't want to really tell the woman that it was rejected. So what I did was I put it in a blog spot. So I was able to take that, then I had more freedom. So, and then after I put it in a blog spot, then I networked the site. And she just got a show at the Conference on the Status of Women. So, okay, that's it. Okay.
So hi everybody, my name is Matsuuchi. I'm a librarian at CUNY LaGuardia Community College. And as Linda was saying, that using Wikipedia is a really tremendous opportunity for... All right, so hi everybody, Ann Matsuuchi at LaGuardia Community College with Professor Jimena Gallardo, who's a professor of English at my college. We do a lot of educational projects. We've been teaching with Wikipedia for several semesters now. But I wanted to introduce one of the most exciting projects we started working on is with the LaGuardia and Wagner archives, which is an archives at our college which they have the holdings of the New York City mayoral collections as well as a lot of New York City history. The archives wanted to find a way to make their collections more visible to the outside world via the internet, right? And so we set up an independent study project with the archives where a team of students could work on needed missing Wikipedia entries. Like, so last semester, we identified the entry for HIV/AIDS in New York City, which did not exist before our students created it. And so each of them chose to focus on a certain part of it. Kimberly here worked on the medical history of AIDS in New York City. And I've got another team of students starting this semester. We're just going to introduce ourselves very briefly.
Hi, my name is Akampreet.
Hi, my name is Kimberly. I actually was part of the project last year, and they are
the new people.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Pia.
Hi, my name is Michael.
Hi, my name is Renee.
I'm Dr. X. I work with them.
So just on Thursday, you know, as our first task, we decided to do an entry for the New York City AIDS Memorial because it didn't exist, right? I mean, everyone's surprised that there's so much that's just, well, first of all, it's a new memorial, but I had hoped that somebody would have jumped on the opportunity, but we did. So on Thursday, this was all created on Thursday, and so we went into a classroom, and our team here each took a section, and the intro, the quote box, the background, the history, added the sources, and, you know, and
then immediately our Wikipedia jumped in and was like, we need more citations for this.
So yes, if you go into view history, you could see who added that box. It was WikiDan, who we don't know personally, which is surprising because the Wikipedia community is so small. It needs to be bigger, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this. You know, is that we really need to make it so that there's much more involvement in order to shape the future of Wikipedia, not just the. So I'm going to close by saying that, you know, that this is part of not just documenting the activism, the AIDS activism in New York City, but this is connecting it with a larger information activism project, which is Wikipedia, because all of this information, it's open access. And I think that this is a really important project because of that, and that we all need to contribute to making this successful because, you know, we need to make sure there's more and more free open access information about content that we care about, which is why in the next presenter, Shelly Eversley from Baruch College, she's going to talk about the Equality Archive, which is a specialized encyclopedia site. And I think that this is something else to remember too. Wikipedia is a general encyclopedia, right? I mean, this is pointing to specialized sources, and I would like it, you know, to exist sort of in a very active, live, you know, ecosystem with specialized sources like the Equality Archive. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, everybody.
Feel free to talk to our students or the project managers of you know, the archives as you meet us. Okay, if you want to know more about what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll be here all day, and as well as our students who would love to share with you their thoughts and feelings about Wikipedia. Right? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelly Eversley. I work at CUNY as well, and all of you who are in New York City know that the City University of New York represents the working classes of New York City and their access to affordable, high-quality education on every level in every borough. And what I was really struck by as a professor was that so many of our students don't have easy access to books, to the kinds of information that very often we take for granted. And in particular, when I was doing a project for some scholarship, from academic scholarship of my own, I came to start to think about the ways in which most people don't know about the Equal Rights Amendment. They don't know that women have been petitioning Congress since 1923 for a very, very simple amendment to the Constitution, very, very, so simple, that I literally built an archive around it, so that we can talk about intersectionality and literally assemble peer-reviewed, fact-checked sources around gender and sex equality in the United States. In doing that, I wanted to, and with the help of all of the collective of professors, artists, writers, specialists who contributed entries, specialized entries to the project. I don't know how to use what's this? A PC. But so what we did was we started with this entry, and we're really excited about the potential for collaboration with Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, of course, is the example that we built on. That is open source, community formed content. This is a little bit different in that Equality Archive has, every entry has an opportunity to get involved in a social action group. It's also set up so that professors, especially at public universities, universities with not as flush resources, can actually use this database right now in a classroom, and students can generate content, they can build and understand the ways in which the question of women's rights, and when I say that, I mean cis and trans-centered women's rights, organize and are literally intersectional. And so what you'll see here is you'll see moments where you can click on large links, you can find video, all of this stuff is already available open source, so that students can listen, they can watch, they can read, and it ends with books, because as an English professor, of course, I am obsessed with books. And it's a growing database, and this database also includes it's organized around a history, issues, people, and participation. The collective of contributors are all people who have published. Some of them are very noteworthy. They're not tagged. They're not identified as authors of the assets and entries, and we're always looking to expand and grow. What's really great for us is that a student or a curious person could literally click on any issue, for instance, or history or person, and find information so that they can then learn more and then follow the threads. As you can see here, there's a cloud, and so you can literally click on the intersectional issues that affect each of these entries. Wonder Woman, actually, and Matsuuchi wrote this, Wonder Woman, and of course some of you might know that she's already published on Wonder Woman, so it turns out that Anne is an expert. And so when she writes this, it's peer-reviewed by editors of the Feminist Press, so it takes a little while sometimes for it to come through, because it's all volunteer. And I think, is my time up? I think it might be. Oh, okay, I was talking really fast because we tend to go on. So, for instance, you can, if you click on this was actually written by a student who's, very much interested in Riot Girl. And so she said, can I do this? And of course she can, because everyone can. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to create the opportunity for us to really, really add the kind of entries that literally create an assemblage of a multimodal visualization, digital project on intersectionality. Of course, feminism is intersectional, but to think about it as assemblage is to think about it in multiple modes of access. And as a teacher, I think about this particularly in the ways that some people access information. As I know that many of my students look, for instance, to YouTube to learn how to, tie a bow tie, to understand a text that might be more complicated. Some people prefer to read an article. This is designed so that it's also responsive. So our students who tend to really only have smartphones, and sometimes they have computers, they can look on this, and if you have a chance, take a look at it on your smartphone. It looks different, and it's scrollable. Most of these entries are only 400 words or less. They're written hopefully in accessible language, but everything is already set up for them to be able to expand their knowledge. You could write a paper based on the sources here. There are hyperlinks, there's There's opportunities for, again, for people to participate in social good organizations, and they're all listed here, and they're also cross-referenced. So if you wanted to, you could also click on, a link here and find out all of the entries that are connected to Chicana community organizations, for instance. Or if you wanted to understand how Equality Archive works and understands gender, you could click on entries as far as, this I'm With Her is about the history of all of the women who've run for president in the United States, in the history of the United States, which dates far back. So I don't want to take any time because I know there's amazing people who are here, and I'm really looking forward to Equality Archive finding a way to collaborate with its inspiration, which is Wikipedia, and so that we can find a way to become a citation source, really, for some of the entries, and also participate in the wiki edit-a-thons, and make sure some of these people who are actually, some of them are entered on Wikipedia, but some of the issues, of course, aren't, right? So we really want to make sure that people understand the intersections and the multiple layers of how that works inside the United States. So thanks for listening.
Is it still morning? No, it's afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon. Come on, you guys. Good afternoon. Let's not just be digital. My name is Professor Kira Gaunt. I teach at Baruch College and Hunter College in the CUNY system. I've been editing Wikipedia, and I have to give thanks to the transition I made almost a year ago by attending the Art and Feminism Wikipedia annual event at MoMA, and I met AfroCROWD there, and I've been collaborating with AfroCROWD and Matsuuchi and others to teach university professors from Hawaii to Puerto Rico last summer at NYU how to edit Wikipedia. 28 of them, it was 28 professors, and like 75 to 80% of them were like, never let your students use Wikipedia. And by the end of a week, they were excited, thrilled. One edited an article about her father, who was a very famous author, but was notable but not known on the web. He had written a book, and she documented that. Another was a photographer, and she edited an article by one of her colleagues who was a renowned photographer that wasn't existing on Wikipedia. My commitment, since I've been signed up for an account since 2007, but I have been only editing seriously in the last year, and I'm really interested in systemic bias around gender and race on Wikipedia. So my students in a course I'm teaching right now at Baruch on social inequality are editing articles around that topic and around those issues. And I wish I could pull this up right now, but I'm just going to tell you, there's a wonderful set of YouTube videos. I'm a YouTube researcher, social media researcher. And there's an article, a video called Pink Floyd, Baking, and Whitewater Kayaking, The Impact of Wikipedia, which was published in 2012. It's a wonderful video of firsthand interviews with Wikipedians from all around the world. But the title struck me as a certain kind of bias, and I want to leave you with this thought. So my Pink Floyd, Baking, Whitewater Kayaking were some of the names of articles that the Wikipedians from around the world in this video mentioned, including communication, nuclear weapons, biodiversity, photography, radioactivity, Armenian history, judges, military history, chess players, Mariam Noor, stab wounds, Montana history, national park history, Yellowstone, Roman history, football. And what we did was we coded these names according to how many views, my students and I last week, how many English viewers saw those articles, what languages they appeared in, and we came up with Pink Floyd as the #1 article among those lists around the world. But also is nuclear weapons and communication, but they're not so sexy. And so our titles, the things that we title our articles or the YouTube videos that we use really need to be thinking in an intersectional way about all of the people who are usually missing around those topics. And I just want to plea and invite everybody, those especially non-people of color and non-women, to really rethink what you do and who your audience is. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Please don't leave. Small announcement. I did want to stop you, but actually lunch is late, so we have time for more questions. Perhaps starting with you, so please don't leave. More questions for the panelists. Lunch is about 5 minutes.
Okay, guys, so we've just gotten a lot of great information here, and you have been such a great audience and so engaged in everything. So we're going to do it this way. If you have any questions, I'll walk around with this mic, that way everyone can hear you. If you'll say who you are asking a question of, that would be very helpful. Panelists, could you come to the front? That way they will be able to do that. Any questions?
Hi, thank you all. Ann and Jimena, get up there too. It's been spoken about that one of the biases, so to speak, of Wikipedia is that you have to have documented
Stand so everybody knows where the voice is coming from.
You have to have documented information. But I'm wondering, especially in these times where there's so many, how would you say, movements, demonstrations, activism occurring right on our streets, right today or yesterday, what could you suggest to such groups as a kind of prerequisite for beginning the documentation before things appear in print? What would you say, how to organize? What kinds of things do they need to think about?
Yeah, I would say history. So for instance, if you're thinking about the Women's March that's coming up next weekend, and there needs to be an entry, and I was just thinking about that for Equality Archive, but how do you do it? Obviously, you've got photographic evidence is evidence of an event. But then if you're looking for a history of marches, you might want to connect it to what's happened before. And that might be a way for someone to offer instant credibility to something that's new, right? The legacy that it comes from. And also, for instance, the Women's March, of course, has its own documentation. They have their points.
Flyers, brochures, all of the stuff that they've been putting out.
Speak in the mic so that they can hear it online.
No, sorry.
Go ahead, finish.
I was just I was just totally agreeing. All the flyers, the brochures, all the things, all the information, the press releases that they've been putting out. You should compile all of that so you can use it to document.
Yeah, but I would say, if you're worried about documentation in the old school way, the professor in me, it's just like, a flyer is really great because it's an artifact of a moment, right? And so that's really important in terms of keeping that archival document together. But in terms of the kinds of documentation, say if you're talking about a student or you want to help someone understand the difference between news and, say, fake news or entries that are reliable, that I always go back to history because that's an easy one, because that's then anchoring, say, the Women's March to the history of women's marches, and that's easy enough to do, right? To be able to find those kinds of connections. You have automatic context, and also you can see the intersections of it. Or also you can look at the points. So, for instance, the Women's March has a list of its issues that they're addressing, and those issues all have resources. They all have references.
I would add two things. One is to get your students, if you're in a college or university setting or a high school setting that has access to databases, to actually use the search engine there to explore what topics are there, whether it's history or culture, but also to use the search engines for YouTube, for Wikipedia. And I'm wondering what you guys do, because you guys have been doing it a little longer than me, about, do you have the students read a few articles on Wikipedia before they write, or do they just start with research for you? I actually like to have my students look to see what's already there, and to look at the sources that are used and actually link through some of the sources before they just jump into writing.
We use models. So for the memorial, it disappeared. For the memorial, we use the African Burial Ground Memorial.
The existing article.
Right, so that they could get a sense of how to write a good one. So they looked at that one first, and then, okay, what kinds of things do we need? And it was kind of a quick thing, this one, but, so models are really important.
Yeah, I had a student who was from Canada who wanted to write an article on race and ethnicity in the NHL. And there was an article called Race and Ethnicity in the NBA, and so he modeled it after that.
Absolutely.
And then found various sources from our resource databases.
One thing that we found that really attracts people is the quotes. So that's where the flyers and things like that come in, right? So you can have a variety of sources, historical, blah, 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 the New York Times, because of course the New York Times is already writing about the march, right? So you have all of that. And then if you can, we got this one from their website, from the website of the memorial, and it's a really powerful quote that kind of explains immediately the importance of the memorial. So, all kinds of sources, really.
Okay, thank you so much. Earlier today, we did speak a little bit about AfroCROWD, and we have the founder of AfroCROWD here who's going to say a few words.
We don't have that much time, so you saw Exhibit 1 to AfroCROWD when Linda spoke. She joined us. She had to leave because she's so busy documenting things. But she came to, just like Sherry, she came to an AfroCROWD Training the Trainers event back in 2015. And ever since, she's written the 15 articles, including the Florence M. Rice. And she just loves it. And so we were very happy to have her talk about it. What I just wanted to say is, on this topic of activism, is that increasingly Wikipedia is a reflection of all of the ideological battles that happen in real life. This is a great example. Wikipedia edits trace back to the NYPD. There's been lots of activism about this around the country. There was just a session on paid editing. I found a source online that said several years ago, and I think there's been lots to address this at this point, but there are a lot of people, it's known that there are a lot of PR firms who edit Wikipedia. And obviously the people who have the means to pay PR firms are not going to be necessarily the people in the activist movement. So it's important, again, it's a great tool. Without the outreach, people don't have access to it. So it's important to bring this tool to activists to let them know that it's there for them, and that it's the 7th largest reference site in the world, that the entry pops up right away, and that the NYPD edits and makes changes to entries of police killings. And so it's important that everybody, now of course these were traced, but the idea is that everyone should have access to this tool, and so we definitely need, as an outreach tool, to make it that activists understand that it's not just trying to get something in the press, it's not just reaching out to a reporter. Editing Wikipedia, monitoring your issue on Wikipedia is also important. So that's it.
That's great.
Thank you. Also, someone just brought up a very important point, that even though these are very charged topics, we maintain a neutral point of view. So, just the facts, ma'am. But of course, they're very important subjects, and Wikipedia can be a powerful tool to ensure that the world has that information at its fingertips and can judge for themselves. We have a comment from Kira.
Yeah, I've been talking to my students about this neutral point of view, and maybe we should start calling it neutral point of views. Because I think that's what leads to the problem, is as if there's one, but that you put both sides or multiple sides or intersectional sides on their neutral point of views.
So we still have just a really brief period for a few more questions. So let's see if anybody has any questions or comments. All right.
Mine is really similar to the first question that was asked, but when I was first learning about Wikipedia and writing articles and citing sources, it was made very clear to me that primary sources are discouraged, secondary sources should be used, but when it comes to documenting the lives of people whose lives are not documented, where is the place for those primary sources? And you're talking about quotes, brochures, interviews, and so does anybody have any experience with posting something based on a one-on-one interview, for instance?
Thank you very much. Anybody?
I think that what we'd say, increasingly I see people talking about verifiable sources, peer-reviewed sources. Obviously, a YouTube video where somebody is interviewed and saying, I was born in Lima, Peru in 1933, that is a pretty good source. Now, that doesn't solve your notability issue. The person has to be notable first, which means that there has to be a unfortunately, under the current rules, there has to be a modicum written on them. Linda did not mention this, but Linda has actually been walking around in Harlem and saying, look, when you guys do these events, when you guys have anything, invite the press so that, even if it's the Amsterdam News, they could actually write about it. Increasingly, people are thinking, there are tons of people working on projects to make sure things are documented. It's just outreach in the mainstream press. So I say once your notability problem is solved, which means that there at least should be there has to be at least a few. It can't be that all you have is that YouTube video. That's what I'd say.
I wanted Anne, the librarian, to respond, because...
I was just having a side conversation about this. It's really difficult, and I think that the people in the Wikipedia community really need to spend some time, working on this, because, there are going to be primary sources, because, that's necessary. To live with this illusion that, there's only like a certain set of acceptable kinds of secondary sources is, it's just, that's not the kind of encyclopedia of the future that we want to build, right? Okay, that said, primary sources, those of us with institutional affiliations, we can also try to find some strategies to publish those interviews, a YouTube video, that's going to be contested no matter what, no matter who the author officially is, right? But if there's some way to tie this with, say, a university or an archive in some other location that might help us argue about its validity, right? That's, yeah.
Okay, we have time for, was there any more questions? There's her and who else?
There was someone.
Okay. That's it? Okay, what was your question?
Okay, this is for multilingual communities, like multi-ethnic, Asian American communities are like reported, they have a lot of coverage in the Chinese American, Chinese, language papers, but they don't reach the other audience. So if you're going to do a wiki page on, like, say, Asian American women's feminists that are doing a march on Saturday, they have a special booth, and how do we, it's anti-Trump, but anyhow, the question is, how do they report it? Because this is like Asian Women United and, different groups that are not really documented again. So how could they're going to be reported in the Chinese newspapers like World Journal and Sino-Vision and so forth. But how do they get into the wiki realm? Because the English wiki.
We cite to those. The only problem is that first to establish, and those are the rules that I've come to find empirically about what sticks and doesn't stick. I didn't make these rules, and I don't like these rules. But what happens is, in terms of your article sticking, generally the admins are going to want to see at least one quote-unquote mainstream source or academic book. And those other sources that we're talking about then come in to fill the gaps. They can't be what you, especially at our edit-a-thons, you write one paragraph. You don't have time to write a whole article. If your one paragraph is relying on that one YouTube source, by the time I get home, the article is gone. And then the person calls me and goes, my article's gone. So we say make sure that if there's one source, you start the article on that foundation first under the current rules. Thank God I got training as a lawyer. So under the current rules, you start your foundation with academic book, something like a major quote-unquote Western paper, and then you add on with the other stuff.
Okay, great.
Currently.
Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
You say it in the mic.
Your sources, Wikipedia is really good about this. Your sources do not have to be in English for you to use them in the English Wikipedia. This is very, very important to know. If they're good sources, you can use them, okay? So something to think about. Yeah.
All right, and so with that, that's it, and lunch is served. So thank you for coming out. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. And
You're going to tell them about the AfroCROWD panel.
and right now is the AfroCROWD panel discussion. Well, it's going to be a planning luncheon in the boardroom, and when you're